All right, let's get into the mailbag. Frank Klose is here, 97.3 ESPN.com, covers the Phillies, and we got a lot to dive into here, Frank. We'll start off, though, with JP Crawford batting seventh, playing third base here. Took a little longer than some people thought, but he has really torn the cover off the ball over his last 72 games, Frank. He's 282 with 13 home runs, and the 22-year-old is up, and I guess this is the trial period for him to see if he will be the everyday something next year.
Yeah, that's funny you say the everyday something, because I'm a little surprised to see him in the lineup at third base. I thought they would put him at his comfortable shortstop before anywhere else, but yeah, it's exciting for Phillies fans right now. Rhys Hoskins brought one wave of energy, and JP Crawford is going to bring a little bit more, which will get them through the last few weeks of the season.
Yeah, tell the people a little bit. I mean, have you ever seen Crawford in person and what they can expect? I mean, he was the top prospect in baseball, and, that's kind of fallen off a little bit over the last year or so. Some scouts were down on him. In fact, Keith Law was on with us in June, right before he got hot, and said, look, I talked to scouts, and they just kind of shrugged their shoulders. They didn't know what was wrong with him. So what was wrong with him, and what has he fixed?
Well, I think right around that time as well, I think what really lit a fire under J.P. Crawford was John Manuel of Baseball America, very highly regarded prospect writer. He tweeted one day that he basically said, scouts think that maybe they were wrong on J.P. Crawford. And, it seemed to light a little bit of a fire under Crawford. He even tweeted indirectly about it, saying basically that, I'll bring it on right now. And he sure did. So I think when you're that highly regarded, you're drafted out of high school, you've always been the best player on your team, it's very easy to get a little overly confident at times, and really perhaps it was finally facing some adversity, but which really was only about a year. When Crawford was promoted from AA to AAA, which I frequently said I thought happened too soon. He was only hitting about 265 at AA. Really, it kind of stalled him a little bit, if you ask me. I thought he was a little bit over his head at that time when he went to AAA. And so it really took about a year's worth of at-bats from mid-2016 to mid-2017 for him to really sort of take hold of AAA and basically show that he was ready. And let's not forget that this guy was drafted 4 years ago out of high school, so it's not like he was roasting in the minor leagues for way too long. I mean, maybe this is about what it should have been.
Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com, and, of course, J.P. Crawford is up. So give us what you think the future holds for the Phillies at shortstop. Do they want Galvis to be the guy, or do they want Crawford to be the guy?
I think a lot of it is to be determined, and the first mailbag question is basically, well, where is he going to play? I think the Phillies don't know yet. I think they still tend to believe that he's going to be the shortstop of the future long term. But at the same time, they're going to be approaching an off-season where they've only got a few more assets that they can trade. They traded off all their veterans, and they've got some infield reinforcements coming along the way with Kingery and Crawford. I really think that they have the potential to be that up-the-middle combination long-term. And I think what they don't want to do is sort of push the likes of Galvis to the side, who only has 1 year left under Phillies control beyond this season, when he could be a trade chip for them even. So, I mean, it's possible that the Phillies keep Galvis as a super utility type player, but I do believe they want Crawford there long term. But how the infield plays out while these extra infielders are around probably depends on whether or not they can receive value for either of them in a trade, because I don't think they're going to give them away. But if they don't give them away, I think they're trying to figure out what options they have.
You've been around Galvis a lot. A lot of people think that he's kind of turned into a leader on this team. I mean, have you seen a lot different Galvis from I mean, you've been around him the last couple of years. Has he really kind of grown into the leader?
Yeah, I think he's developed a lot of leadership qualities. He hung out a lot around Andres Blanco over the years, who was sort of and still remains sort of a kind of a veteran voice to a lot of the young Latin players on the team. And yeah, I think he's become a leader, and really he's the longest tenured Philly they have at this point. So really, kind of by default, he's the guy that's been around the longest, and and can really speak from that perspective as somebody who's been around and who was a backup player for many years and sort of grew into a starting role, and he's done a nice job this year as as a starter too. So I think that helps too, that he is an everyday player at the moment. But probably his future long term, I think it's as good as he's been this year. It's really easy to get overly excited for his best couple months of his career, and I don't think people should over-evaluate that or overvalue what Freddy Galvis is, which I still believe is a very, very good super utility player.
Frank Klose is with us. The Phillies mailbag is open. JP Crawford set to make his major league debut tonight against the Mets at third base. Freddy Galvis will be at short, and you keep mentioning the word trade, Frank. You said trade several times, and Kevin with an appropriate question there. He wants to know which current Phillies are most likely to be traded before the 2018 season.
Well, I think it's really hard to really pick somebody and say that there's an obvious candidate to exit this offseason. But the Phillies infielders definitely could be on the bubble, depending whether or not they get any value back. Hernandez is in a position where Kingery could take over the position soon. One scenario I can see happening is that the Phillies trade Cesar Hernandez to acquire some prospects in return. Again, they have to get the right return for them to trade somebody like Hernandez, and kind of opens up an infield spot. I could see the Phillies signing a veteran second baseman type player. Like maybe there's somebody out there like Neil Walker that they who had some injuries that they could get on a 1-year deal to sort of be a veteran infielder and at the same time sort of keep second base warm for later. So I think if there's value for Hernandez, if there's value for Galvis, and even right now I think they're trying to figure out what to do with Maikel Franco, who could be moved also. Now the Phillies, as we're seeing right now, are trying all this position swapping so that whoever they trade, they can sort of make the infield work next year no matter what, whether it's Crawford playing some third or maybe even Maikel Franco playing some first base. I think you're going to see some of that coming up, and I think Pete Mackanin said as much. So I think they're trying to go into the offseason with just an open mind that we've got extra infielders. If we can get value for some, we'll make a move. And if we can't, we think we have some versatile players that could be mixed and matched. So of those infielders, I think any of them could move, and really there's no other obvious candidates to really be traded, considering most of the players that are left are younger. I think, as I said last week, the Phillies outfield is set with Altair, Williams, and Herrera, unless there's a substantial upgrade out there. And I think the Phillies are willing to make any trades as long as there is an upgrade. And even though they have some nice players, maybe they can get some nicer players. So a lot depends on what's available to them and really who's willing to give value for what they have.
Herrera back with the big league club, too. Now, Rocky wants to talk pitching, Frank, because he wants to know what veteran starting pitcher will or should the Phillies add in the offseason.
Yeah, one name he mentioned in particular was Jake Arrieta, and I just want to say I don't think that the Arrietas of the world are a match. Now, whoever signs Jake Arrieta is getting a 32-year-old pitcher who let's face it, also had a little bit of a down year. But the Jake Arrietas and the Yu Darvishes of the free agent class this offseason are probably not what the Phillies need right now. Now let's just think for a second. The two big time pitchers the Phillies had in recent years, Cliff Lee and Roy Halladay. When you think about when they started breaking down age-wise, you're looking at like 34, 35. So whoever signs those types of players kind of sign them knowing full well that at the back end of their contract, which could be 5 years even, might essentially have to get stuck eating some money at the end. Well, maybe you're willing to make that risk only if you expect to contend in 2018. I don't think if you're the Phillies and it might take a couple years, you want to pay all that money for the prime of Arrieta or Darvish if at the end you're going to be stuck with a contract that might not be so helpful to you. So I think they're going to try to make a trade. I think they're going to look for a controllable young pitcher. Names like keep coming back to Chris Archer, Garrett Cole. There might be some out there I haven't thought of yet, or we don't know, or might be available yet. And I think that they'll maybe sign somebody. One name I kind of like right now is somebody like Alex Cobb, who isn't a dominant pitcher, but he's been a decent pitcher for the Rays. He's kind of pitching to a 3.5 ERA this year. Been pretty solid. I think that's the type of pitcher that they won't have to go too long-term on, but sort of could stabilize the middle of the rotation. So if I had to guess, I think they might trade for one, and they might sign somebody of kind of the Alex Cobb caliber.
All right, JP Crawford makes his debut tonight, batting 7th, playing third base. Frank Klose has more on our website, 973ESPN.com. Follow Frank on Twitter at Frank Klose with a K, Klose. Since July 1st, Crawford, 13 home runs, 36 RBI, slugging .544, a .385 on-base percentage, and 65 hits in 61 games. We'll see how that translates to the big league level starting tonight. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, gentlemen.